Welcome again, everybody, to the LA.Blend Westside Meetup. So LA actually has a couple of Blender groups. This group tends to meet over on the coastal parts of LA. We've been running this for, gosh, how many years are we going on now, Sean? 5, 6, something like that. Yeah, 5, David says. So David, who's joining us, is part of our original meeting organizers group, and he's now remote, but he takes part in every one of these meetings, and he helps us get the content online. So we have a pretty cool agenda today. We usually do an introduction, which we just did, and then a what's new with Blender. We have Joe and Cobalt hopefully coming in from Studio 229 this morning. They're a small studio here in LA that do virtual reality projects. They've done work like creating music videos. I think they actually maybe even have a game to show off today. And we've actually showed off some other games. We will probably be showing off some 3D render porn from what I hear from David at Theory Studios. He's showing how to set up like giant render farms and render on giant multiprocessor systems. So that should be pretty cool. And then we open it up to show and tell, to basically see what you guys are working on. We want to hear about it. If you have a project, no matter how big or small, we'd love to hear about it. So with that, I'm gonna actually talk about some of the stuff that's happening with Blender. So let me just find this. Okay, so it's been a while since our last meeting. I think it was May, if memory serves. We typically don't have a meeting during LA SIGGRAPH. If you've never been to SIGGRAPH, I strongly recommend it. It's an amazing conference. Happens once a year here in LA mostly, and it's a combination of the art of graphics and the science of computer graphics, and you got all the big studios are there, all the big vendors for digital content creation are there. The people who make Blender come and meet there, and they give what's called a birds of the feather talk. So they talk about the roadmap for the software. All of the LA Blender folks that usually come to these meetings, we go there instead. So that happened in July. So we didn't have a meeting during that month. So we're having one now. It's been so long that it's pretty much impossible to summarize all of the great stuff that's happened between then and now. So I'm just hitting the highlights to give you a taste of what's available. So the most important thing is there's a new version of Blender that's been released, 2.79. It's been in development for quite a while. And there's some awesome features in this build, which is great because I think the next version is going to take a while. So we have to be really happy with the version that we have for a bit. Some impressive stuff that's gone in includes cycle denoise. So you know, the big problem with ray trace renderers is that it takes a very long time to compute a very clear image. So denoise helps with that problem. So you can compute something for a very short period of time and then run a denoiser across it, and it actually makes everything look a little bit smoother. We have Filmic color management, which is a technique. It's a component of the software that allows you to work in a more linear color style. So actually, Sean, you could probably give the best explanation of it. Nah?
Yeah,
maybe. Okay, all right, anyways.
I understand that it's very complex.
It is. Yeah, you have to know a little bit about Color IO, which is the open source component that does the color management, but effectively, it gives you a greater dynamic range of color in your renders. So things look more realistic when you're done. It requires understanding how to then compensate for that and, you know, boost some of your color saturation, that kind of thing. But it's a really big step to have this in the software. Makes things a lot more film-like and filmic. There's a new Ppr shader, which is pretty cool. It's previously called the Disney shader. They've now renamed it to the Principled shader, which I assume is because the Disney paper was called Creating a Principled EXTF or something like that, and nobody wants any copyright battles with Disney. But it's pretty cool. It's effectively an Uber shader that if you create cycle shader nodes, they're usually pretty complex. This simplifies the job quite a bit and allows you to create very realistic materials very quickly. We have faster OpenCL. So AMD, the CPU manufacturer and video card manufacturer, has been donating to the Blender project to ensure that the Cycles render renders really well on their hardware. And so they've completely rewritten the render kernel to be able to take advantage of OpenCL, which is Open Compute Library, I think it stands for. It's kind of a generic layer to abstract away the render hardware. We have a shadow catcher, which Sean has demoed in previous versions of this meeting. So pretty cool. That's been a long time coming in the software. We have a lot of Cycles improvements. We have new modeling and modifiers that have been added. There's some animation features. The grease pencil is just on fire. So the grease pencil, in case you aren't familiar with it, is really just a markup tool within the 3D view when you're modeling something and you want to send it to somebody and draw an arrow and say, this right here, you know, we need to enhance the texture on or something. You can do that, but it's in 3 dimensions, right? So somebody, one of the developers for Grease Pencil just kept adding more and more and more features, and now it's effectively turning into a 2D animation tool. And people are doing animatics and stuff like that using it, but people are producing whole 2D films using it as well. And in fact, where is it? Did it make it on here? There is a Hero 2D open movie project that's spinning up at the Blender Institute that's doing exactly that. They're doing a whole 2D movie using Grease Pencil. Lots of UI improvements. Lots of UI improvements, better Alembic support. So Alembic's a format for interchange between digital content creation packages. We have a lot more robust support in Blender now. Some Python APIs. There's some really awesome add-ons that have been added. You guys been checking out some of these add-ons? Yeah. Oh man.
I haven't gotten to the list.
It's crazy some of the stuff you can do with add-ons these days. Anything else in 2.79? Anybody wants to speak about? Yeah.
What is the Python API?
So Python is a programming language, and there's a full set of APIs within Blender to access Blender features through Python code. So the most obvious use for it is if you need to do something repetitively, you just write a script. And so let's say you want to create 2 million flowers, but have each of them be slightly unique, and maybe each of them are doing a different little dance or something like that. You can write some Python code for that, so you're not clicking and doing this for hours and hours on end. Really powerful. So if you're doing visualization, we get people in here from data visualization fields, and you can do a lot of work with Python. Anything else anybody wants to mention in 2.79 before we move on? All of these are, even though they don't look like it, they're clickable. So there's some really great feature overviews on the blender.org site. And there's also some really great videos up on YouTube where people run you through the 2.79 features. Maybe we could...
What is Alembic?
Alembic. You want to take a stab at that?
It is it's a way to export a file if you have models, animation, particle systems, and all kinds of stuff happening in Blender, and you want to take it to another program. You're working with people who are working with Maya, Max, or Cinema 4D. Blender files obviously don't open those programs. There's FBX, which is a common interchange format, where Maya can read and write FBX, Max can read and write it, Cinema 4D. But FBX has a lot of proprietary code in it, so they can't fully incorporate FBX into Blender because then they'd be releasing some of Autodesk's code for free, which they're not allowed to do. So they can only go so far with FBX. So Alembic is an open source version of that same thing where everybody kind of supports it. It's catching on more and more. And when it first came out, I think you could only support like models and things. Now it can support animation, particles, liquids, things like that. It breaks it all down into like it's called like a cached file, where if you, in Blender, you've got your full rigged character, you can change it, animate it. Once you bake out that element, you can't change it. You bring it into your other program, and it's just a locked thing. You can't do anything with it. But you can use it. You can, and I think they're working on making that more and more, where the rigs will actually come over the door. I think so. I believe that's in development. It's useful. I use it a lot of work because Blender doesn't, like the guys just said, it doesn't talk very well to commercial products yet. So anytime I need something from our Maya guys or some 4D guys or our tracking department, I ask them, you export Blender, and they always do. It works for you. Yeah, it's useful.
One question. Are we at a point A or point B yet with the 2.79?
No, I think 279 just came out a couple days ago.
Yeah.
A week ago. Which one? Sometime in the last week.
Blender 2.79. Yeah, it came out earlier in the week.
Yeah. Not yet.
Oh, right.
Sure it's coming.
So the question for folks online was, do we have a 2.79 B or C yet? Which usually means they caught something really critical post-release, but nope, not yet. It's fresh off the press. So it's up to us, I guess, to find those bugs and submit them. Okay, so just to kind of show you really quickly, because I know I've had feedback, it's more interesting to show these features than to talk about them. Just gonna show you the Ppr shader real quick. So basically, you know, here's a default scene, right? We'll go back here. So here's your default scene. You know, we have a camera, a light. If we go to compositing here, I've switched over to the cycles render. These are the different render engines. And if I go to compositing, so typically to create like a material for this, what you would do is you would, the standard, the kind of like standard material is to create a diffuse and then a glossy node, and then you would add a, let's see, you'd add a mix shader, and you would add these together, and then you would probably add something like a Fresnel node that you could just put in as a mixing factor, and then you would, you know, start to muck around with this. Let's make it red, and let's make this like super shiny, and so on and so forth. But the shader nodes to do this get like really complex. So the new way to do it, and I'll just do let's get rid of all these, is to add this shader called there it is, principled BSDF, which stands for, I'm gonna see if I can get this right, bidirectional scattering distribution function. So it's yeah, so it basically describes how when light hits a surface, how it's distributed, right? So is the surface rough, and so therefore the light beams that hit it are distributed in a more scattered way, or is it really focused? Did I get that right? Does anybody want to correct me? No? All right, nobody does. So, okay, so what we have now is a principled BSDF, which we just hook up to the surface node here. And we have all sorts of options on this thing. It looks a little intimidating, but it's actually pretty simple to work, right? So you have your base color. So if we wanted to make this red, we would just make it red. We have a subsurface color, which is pretty cool. We can, I don't know why I would make that anything, but, well, we'll just leave it where it is. And then you have this either dielectric or metal-based workflow. So materials in the real world can be split into one or two categories. They're either metals or they're not metals, right? Which are also called dielectrics. So ceramic, plastic, rubber, whatever. And how you tweak this principled BSDF depends on which of those two things you're doing. So if this is a metallic, you know, crank this up, and I'm sorry, I need like a HDRI or something to really do this properly, which is why I was bouncing around on this site. Let's see if I can grab an HDRI for you guys real quick. Let's grab this one and download it. Yeah, there we go. And so this kind of gets you into image-based lighting. Don't know if you guys have seen this before, but image-based lighting in Blender allows you to really easily light a scene. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to select that HDRI that we just looked at. Let's see. Where'd it go? Down, 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 down. Up, up. There it is. Thank you. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. If we go to the camera view and we render. So what's happening in this is it's taking this three-dimensional high dynamic range image and it's using the light from that photograph to light this model. So if the sun's up here, the model's going to cast a shadow on the other side of it. Really cool, really simple to set up. So what we were going to do is just go back as soon as I get rid of this crazy floating thing. There we go. Let's put you over here. So if we go back to compositing, you know, we don't want metallic. Let's say that we want, say, let's see, transmission. Let's turn up the subsurface on it, and you'll notice this thing starts looking a lot more like wax, right? Because we're introducing subsurface scattering, which allows us to have the light rays enter the object and then scatter around inside before exiting again. Anyways, bottom line is there's probably a whole session we could do on the principal shader. It's pretty cool. I would say start using it. And the nice thing is it's also being built into Eevee, which is a real-time render engine that they're building into the viewport. So if you start building your stuff using the principled shader, it'll be compatible with the Eevee engine when it's released in 2.8.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Does it affect the render times at all using that shader?
Okay, so the question was, does using the principled shader affect the render times compared to traditional nodes? I've found it personally to be a little faster, just because what happens is when you render a series of shader nodes, there's a compilation involved, and so the larger, more complex your node tree is, the more time it takes to do that. There are a couple of really good articles where people have compared like subsurface scattering rendering time versus traditional subsurface node. And it's sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower, but it's pretty close. Okay. It's pretty close. It's not something you would worry about, in my opinion. Anyone else have another opinion on that? Hey, welcome. Okay, so moving on. So Blender 2.8 is on its way, and it looks really cool. So there's a couple of different things that they're doing. Number one, they're revamping the entire 3D viewport so that we have new ways of looking at objects. Specifically for game developers, well, for starters, they're revamping the whole underlying graphics library system they use. It's called OpenGL, or Open Graphics Library, to get it up to a modern standard. And then on top of that, they're building something called Eevee, which is a game engines render in real time. So now Blender is going to be able to do that as well. So if you're creating metals in the viewport, they're going to look shiny and reflective. And if you're creating, everything from lights to textures to shadows are all kind of being built into the viewport so that you'll see what things look like before you even have to send it out to a renderer. It's really neat. There's a whole, so the viewport has many other features they're building in. There's clay renders you can view. You can specify some things to be wireframed, some things not. The underlying dependency graph, which powers Blender, is being updated. And then the whole way that we organize objects when we're 3D modeling or animating is being updated. So we have this concept of collections instead of layers. And there's some really great articles that have gone up recently, show you how to do that. And then lastly, they're building Blender for more beginner audiences. So there's something called the Blender 101 project, which has been kicking around for a while, where if somebody's new to the product, we want to simplify things to the point where they can go through a workflow and create things without having a million different options in their face. And so they're reorganizing the UI around different workflows as well. Hopefully things like compositing and UV editing and all the rest of it. Anybody want to mention anything else related to 2.8? Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know if the principal shader is on some poly as well?
Does it do? I don't.
You still have to use there's two other shaders, volume, absorption, and scattering. You still have to use those.
Yeah, and it doesn't do emission. So if you want to build lights, you're not going to use a principal shader or anything emitting light. So the question was, does the principal shader do volume? And the answer is not yet. Okay. So a couple of new resources that have gone up recently. So if you're not familiar with the Blender Cloud, this is the Blender Cloud. So cloud.blender.org. It's a paid service, and the money, I think it's somewhere around $12 a month or something. It's pretty nominal. But the money all goes to the Blender Institute to make the product better. And there's a lot of cool stuff on the site. So you can get libraries like HDR, HDRIs, like I was just talking about. There's a textures library. You can actually download whole characters if you want to. There's a whole bunch of training courses, and there's some really amazing training courses out there for Blender. You can get access to open projects, so understand all the Blender Institute does these open movies where they create a movie and they make all of the assets available to everyone for free. So all of the models, all of the animation, all of the concept art, music. I think they make music. Made music available. I'm not entirely sure about that last one. But this is what I was talking about earlier. So this is the 2D film that they're making using the software in the grease pencil. Anyhow, well worth it. Highly recommend it. I thought I'd mention just a couple of new items off of that site. So Attract and Flamenco. If you're doing some really big Blender work, Flamenco is a distributed rendering package, and Attract is an asset tracking system. And they've released Flamenco for free. So imagine you're 5 people working on a movie project or an animation. You could all be doing your own thing, submit your work. Everybody can see what everybody's working on. And then you could say, okay, go render. And it'll push it out to many different machines, go render it, and then bring back the results for you. So super handy. I haven't had a lot of hands-on with it myself. Has anybody played with Flamenco or Attract?
Attract.
Yeah.
An early version I used a couple of years ago. It's nice. They've changed it a lot since I used it, and I haven't used the new one yet. I started setting it up, but it requires, I keep my main workstation off the internet.
Yeah.
And it requires, internet, when it first came out, it required that you have an edit in Blender in the VSE, and then you'll populate the shots. It's like shot tracking. It puts every shot into its own little task. And it would do that automatically. But I wasn't editing in Blender, and I wasn't connecting my main machine to the internet. So
sure.
It ended up not being super useful. But I think they're working on changing that, where you can have a team of people where only one person is a Blender Cloud member, and that whole team can be utilizing it. But it is really nice. It's nice to be able to keep track of all your notes on for every shot if you're working on a movie or something. To see the movies, like little clips and images all right there in line.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost essential if you're doing any kind of big project.
Sure.
For the team, so.
Yeah, I guess if you're in the commercial space, you're using something like Shotgun or F-Track. Yeah. This would be the equivalent, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So on the subject of scripting, using Blender. There was a question about Python here. There's been a new course released on the Blender cloud called the Blender Scripting for Artists. So obviously using Python being the language of choice for CG artists. The Dweebs Open Movie, there's a bunch of artists at the Blender Institute in Amsterdam, and they've, in their spare time, they've been working on a very small animation project called the Dweebs. Agent 327, they put up, this is a feature-length movie that the Blender Institute is pursuing, and they've put up a whole bunch of training about how they produced the teaser clip that they put out recently. So, how they created the scenes, how they created the textures, all of that kind of stuff. And then if you're really interested in what's going on with the software, you're obsessed like I am, you tune into the Blender Studio podcast, which happens, I forget if it's like every couple of weeks or what, but it's really good. It's usually the artists that are working at the studio. They sometimes bring in developers to talk about new features and that kind of thing. So it's it's neat. I recommend it. It's free. Grab it, listen to it. Some of the stuff that I've been seeing on Go Up Online that is kind of interesting lately, there's a whole bunch of Blender sculpting brushes that have been posted up to Blender Nation lately. Blender has a digital sculpting feature. So similar to how you'd sculpt clay, you could just freeform sculpt in Blender. Some people find that workflow a lot more liberating than like pushing and pulling vertices and polygons around. So you get to tablet and you get to kind of sculpt away. Anyways, there's brushes. There's like 3 different artists that are posting brushes lately. Krita, which is not part of Blender, it's actually a painting program. They've released a major version of that. Really nice. We talked about Eevee. Let me give you guys an example of this. Hopefully these links came across. Yes, they did. Good. We want to use Chrome. So, let me give you an idea of kind of what we're talking about here. So, so here you can see this is the Blender 3D viewport. This guy's working with some shader nodes that looks like the principled shader we just looked at. And you can just kind of scrub through your animation and rotate it around it. And what you're seeing is like fog glow up at the top. You're seeing lighting, reflections. It looks like there's some reflection maps happening at the bottom here. Things you would typically see within a game engine. This is Blender 2.8 that's doing this. It's really kind of neat. And there's a whole bunch of examples that have been coming out over the past month showing off stuff like this. There we go. Speed this up. So pretty neat stuff, hey? This is the kind of viewport. Yeah, go ahead.
Does Eevee run off like GPU or like how does it work?
Yeah, so it's all OpenGL based. So yes, I guess whatever's powering your OpenGL, which is typically your GPU. Yep. So the bigger your GPU, I guess, the faster it's going to run. But yeah, neat stuff. There's a whole bunch of what we call Eevee porn going up here. Let's see if there's another good example. Yeah, here's an interior test. So if you're doing visualization for architecture, like my friend Key over here, then this sort of thing might be super interesting to you. You just muck around in real time with really amazing results. So typically, you would need to render to get a result like this, which means you'd model a bunch of stuff, hit F12 in the package, and then go get a sandwich, come back, and you'd have a single view of what this would look like, right? It might take 5-10 minutes. He's messing with real-time depth of field and this. Now it's real time, right? So you could just, it's continually rendering constantly. And there's people that have turned out whole movies, actually, just straight out of the viewport. Okay, so some other stuff. There's been some Unreal Engine have been actually producing some nice tutorials about using Blender with Unreal. So if you're serious about doing VR, Unreal is a really great engine that could speak from experience for creating environments in Blender and then putting your headset on and running around inside them in Unreal. It's really nifty. So worth checking out. We've got some cycles, 360 CPUs rendering on cycles. I'm a hardware guy, so I get really excited when I see Blender running on supercomputers. The Blender Conference 2017 presentation schedule is online, which means we can look and see what the sessions are that are going to get presented. Anybody planning to go to the Blender Conference this year? Yeah, Sean is? Awesome. We need an event report from you, buddy, when you come back. It happens in Amsterdam. October, right? Yeah.
So hop, skip, and jump away.
Just across the pond, you know. Are there any direct flights to Amsterdam? I don't even know. Okay. Right. So anyways, if you want to go hear from Blender artists around the world coming in, that's the place to go. So there are two Blender groups here on the West Coast that I just want to make sure everybody's aware of. Blender PDX, which is out of Portland, and Cbug, which is out of Seattle. They happen in our same time zone. So if you ever want to jump online and watch their sessions remote, they broadcast them both. So just more information. SIGGRAPH 2017, actually a hot link, this one. So I told you about SIGGRAPH. Sean has done this really nice write-up, which I just spotted last night. I haven't had a chance to read it, on what the interesting stuff at SIGGRAPH was. I noticed that looks like Jonathan Williamson's tool, right? Yeah. So anyways, if you want to know what's going on at SIGGRAPH and in general, check out open source visual effects stuff. Go check out visualeffects.com. Let's see, and then the Suzanne Awards. So if you're doing really cool stuff in Blender, once a year they have an artist award that they give out at the Blender conference called the Suzanne Award. Is anybody not familiar with who Suzanne is? Okay, so inside Blender,
Was that the monkey?
it's the monkey. That's exactly right. So when you go to add primitives, there's this monkey, which, not George, no. So here's your monkey. And it's apparently named after Suzanne from the movie Clerks.
Yeah, James had a boss.
Jane Silent Bob, is that it?
Yeah, that's the one where they're trying to, they got the monkey with them the whole movie.
Okay, I haven't seen that movie, but it's pretty funny. I mean, every 3D package is something. I think there was one that you add, there's a menu item that says, I want a pony, and it puts like a horse inside your scene. I forget which one that was. Anyways, so that's it. Does anybody else have anything really interesting they want to announce, or books, you know, CG, visual effects, VR, game dev books they've read, or events they've been to, or? Sure.
If I wanted to watch the PDX and the CBUG, how would I do that?
So they have a website, which I think I linked to here. So like if you want to go to blenderpdx.org, looks like it's their website. So they present, I think, on it's like the second Saturday of the month or third Saturday of the month. And same thing with Cbug. But if you Google for both of those, looks like these guys have a Meetup page. Yeah, there's lots of, so I'll just say it just because there's a bunch of people in the room that may be less familiar. These are the sites you need to know for Blender. So obviously blender.org, this is where you go to download it. Blender Nation, this is like the LA Times of Blender. There's like articles literally updated every single day on cool stuff. This is Blender Artist. So if you're creating CG and you want to talk to other people that are using Blender to create CG and ask questions and get feedback on your art, maybe a critique, that kind of thing, this is definitely the place to go. Then we have CG Cookie. So CG Cookie is a paid-for training site. They have some free content, but most of it is paid for. These guys, in my opinion, I think do the best job if you want to learn Blender. You're willing to just pay a reasonable amount of money to do it. They have pretty affordable prices. They've got really great training, really awesome. Everything from series of computer-based trainings that you take at your own speed to whole workshops where you have instructor virtual lead training. Another popular one is Blender Guru. Oops. Which, so obviously didn't link there. So if I just type Blender Guru. So this is a guy based out of Asia named Andrew Price, and he puts up a bunch of tutorials, all of them free. He has some paid products like texture libraries and HDRI libraries, that kind of thing. But for the most part, his stuff is free. And then BuildBot, in case you've never been there, this is where you go, whoops, and it looks like they changed the layout here. So if you want to get pre-release versions of Blender, like the next version, like 2.8 that I was just talking about, you can download it from here. Otherwise, just go to blender.org to download it. So anyone else want to make any announcements or talk about new features or?
You put your slides up after somewhere on the site.
I do not, but I'm happy to send you a copy.
Okay,
So
just 'cause you have all those links in there.
I do, yeah. I got loads. There's loads of links you can't even see in there. So send me an email. Hit me at a break and give me your email and I'll send it out. Yeah.
There's also graphical.org.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of different Blender builds, custom builds.
That's graphical.org. Yeah, so experimental builds of not just Blender, but GIMP, which is an open source painting package, kind of like the Photoshop of open source. LuxRender, which is a open source renderer that's an alternative to what's built into Blender. Same. You know what that is? Inkscape, which is mostly 2D painting. I like Adobe Illustrator, so vector graphics.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, if you're looking for just pre-release versions of Blender, go to builder.blender.org. If you're looking for something truly experimental, like maybe somebody has a patch that they built that's kind of unique to some super duper cool feature, you can go get it here. I'm a security guy by trade, so I feel a little weird about getting somebody else's compiled versions of Blender because you just never know, right? But anyhow, anything else? Good tip. Awesome.
Hey everybody, my name is David Andrade. As Sterling said, I was one of the original members of LA.Blend. Then I moved out to Florida, but you know, my heart's still out there with you guys. So I try my best to organize this from a virtual standpoint, and also do a lot of cool Blender work. I co-founded a company called Theory Studios with a couple of partners throughout the world, and we're one of the world's first virtual animation visual effects companies. We help out our friends over at Barnstorm up in Burbank in California to do a lot of work on Man of the High Castle in Silicon Valley. On top of that, we also do a lot of work with Sesame Street, and recently we've begun a little partnership with Ford doing a lot of augmented reality kind of stuff. And on top of that, we are huge Blender nerds, so we're constantly in Blender doing crazy stuff. So what I wanted to show today is some of the technology that we've been working on internally with our partners at Barnstorm Visual Effects, and really just for us to push Blender and to do some crazy shit that hasn't really been done before. So I've got a couple of things that I want to show off. 3 videos made by our render TD, Derek Barker, colloquially known as Lord Odin all over the internet. So if you ever hear about Lord Odin, that's that guy. So I'm going to be showing off some of his stuff, and I'm going to show off a cool new feature that we've developed. Now, for the course of High Castle and most of this year, really, we brought on a guy by the name of Lucas Stockner, and maybe some of you have heard of him. He is a Blender programmer out of Munich in Germany, and he's mostly focused on doing cycles development. So one of the coolest things that we asked Lucas for that has become a giant project, something called UDIMs. So I'm pleased to announce that we've got a version of Blender that has UDIM support, and you can kind of see what's going on here. Now, for the visual effects people in the audience, you're like, whoa, and for the people who have no idea what a UDIM is, you have no clue. And that's okay. I'm gonna describe kind of what a UDIM is. Basically, a UDIM allows you to pack multiple texture maps in one material. Now, the reason why you would do this is really for simplicity's sake. There might be a case where you have one material like this big old water tower, but it's really one object, so you want to paint across different materials. And at the same time, you want some to have smaller resolutions and you want some to have larger resolutions. So this water tower is a very good example of what's going on here. It's really just one water tower UDIM, but combined with multiple maps. Now, every one of these maps is its own texture set. And then on top of that, we are huge fans of the principled shader. So we've actually got like 4 or 5 maps per material. So you can imagine with a bunch of UDIMs and a bunch of maps, these things can get really, really heavy, really, really fast. For some of the scenes that we're working on in High Castle now, we're well over 20 UDIMs, just because we need incredible texture fidelity when we get like right up close into some of our assets. So this has been a huge project internally, and we hope to release it sometime later this year. Of course, with now the addition of 2.8 in the mix, we might have to adjust it for that build, but it's working in our custom build of 2.79 quite nicely. And if the demo gods smile upon me, I'm gonna hit render, and hey, what do you know, look at that. I'm on a Mac, so it's gonna do CPU rendering, but you can see what's going on right now. It's rendering out this entire little guy, all using UDIM texture. So it's one material with different texture sets, a texture set being base color, metallic, roughness, normal, height. We use a PBR workflow. So it's really awesome because now I can take this 3D object, put it into Mari or into Substance, our software of choice. I don't have to screw around with breaking out the object into multiple pieces. I just have one object, one thing to work with. All the materials play with each other. Anything that drips from one will go onto the other. And it works. It feels like a real, actual water tower. And I'm really proud of this one because this has been a 4-month in development feature. And our shading artists have been working very closely with Lucas Stockner to get this into Blender. So I'm really excited to show this off. And hopefully coming to Blender officially sometime later this year. So it's pretty cool. So I'll scroll by this and you can kind of see what's going on. These are all textured inside Substance, so we get a ton of fidelity. And you know, the best thing about this is we don't have to totally worry about texture space. We just have to make sure that they look good and that the seams are pretty decent. And the rest, it's just painting out a few seams, and then the rest just becomes automatic maps and trying to maximize our resolution. Now, I know for this little demo, I probably could have packed these a little bit better, but you know, just to try to get the idea across. We're still having trouble getting it to work in material mode, though. That's the one downside to UDIMs. It'll work sort of in texture mode, but then in texture mode, it kind of like kills itself. Those are tough things, but at the very least, we do have it working in render mode, and we're really happy about that. So we've been using UDIMs and the Principled Shader for quite some time now in Blender, and there's other little tricks on top of all of this that we've invented along the way for working on Man in a High Castle and all of the other work that we've been doing. So I wanted to show a video demo here. Our render TD, or lead render TD, Lord Odin, Derek Barker, has been working with Lucas on a lot of these tricks. Oh, Sterling, I think I saw your head. Something going wrong? Are we all right? Thumbs up? Okay, we got the okay, good. So the first thing, this one is going to play to Sterling's heart. We're really big fans of AWS and Amazon, and for a good majority of the summer, we've just been testing new stuff. And one of them is a feature called net rendering. So I'll try to describe that. If anyone uses RenderMan, you might know what a rib file is. Kind of has a similar idea to that. Blender, when it is about to render, does a process called synchronization. In synchronizing it, it basically takes all your objects, your materials, the textures, and lumps it together as this big old data block that is sent to Cycles to then process and render, and you get a really pretty image. So our thought was, well, what if you could take this block of data that's really optimized for Cycles and distribute it to multiple machines and have all of those machines contribute back to like the main render, right? So I know that sounds like crazy, but the idea here is that we don't necessarily need to send the actual Blender file to every person. We just need to send this byte stream to Cycles to then process everything and feed it back to the master machine, if you will. So it's really hard to kind of describe that via words, so we have a video. And if the demo gods and video gods smile upon us, you'll see 640 threads appear. And hopefully, Sterling, give me a thumbs up if that comes across, all right? Nice, nice. Yeah, so this is crazy shit. I'm not gonna lie. There's really no way to describe what's going on here other than, wow, that it actually worked. So this is a machine that is on Amazon rendering right now. Well, not now, at the time the video was recorded. This is a machine that's rendering. It's a Linux box. It has Blender, and there's Blender running on a couple of other machines. We have 10 machines, each with 64 threads, so 640 threads. Blender does its synchronization, takes that data, sends it to all the other machines, just the byte stream. They process it, feed it all the way back into Blender, and you get like, you know, super high-res renders in 40 seconds. So I'll just kind of let this video play one more time because this is really fun. This is the last Nebula test, and it's just like mind-blowing to see a ton of threads. So if you don't know much about Blender, every one of those little orange squares that you see going on, maybe I'll start this one. Every one of these little orange squares is a logical thread, a piece of a processor, if you will, right? So if your processor has 12 threads, there would be like 12 little orange boxes. And we got 640 of them going all at once. Now, does this work over the internet? We've actually tested it, and it does. There's obviously a latency to deal with, but if the internet connection is fast enough, latency is really the only big issue, but it does work. It actually does work quite well. In terms of supercomputers and doing it on Amazon, it's kind of nice because they're all relatively close to each other on these like dark magic fiber pipes that they have over there. So the speeds is a lot faster, and there's no latency really. So that's one of the cool features that we've just been doing, and I figured Sterling especially would probably have a face melt over that. It's pretty cool. I'm
fainting here in the room.
Fainting. There's two other features, or one other feature that we've been working on. And this is one of those, we don't know if it'll ever make it in a Blender, but it's really cool, and we use it a lot for testing out renders, and it's called light scrambling. This is something where I kind of wish Lucas were here to join us and describe the math and algorithms behind it. But in simple, I guess in layman terms, it basically simplifies where the pixel picks the nearest neighbor. Like, hey, what's my neighbor doing? What's my other neighbor doing? I'm going to average that out. Now, that obviously sounds like a cool idea, and there's a precedent for that. If we turn it all the way to 1, it's only just going to sample basically itself. But if we turn this light scrambling all the way to 0, it's going to try to sample everybody nearby, simplifying how much lighting you really need in a scene, how much information you need in a scene. This leads to obvious artifacts, but it's generally pretty good for just really rough tests. So what you're seeing right now is light scrambling of 0 turned on right now. There are no bounces either. So now Derek is going to start kicking up a couple of bounces and start playing with the environment a little bit. And as you can see, it may not translate too well going through Zoom, I realize. Let me try to play this one. I'll play this speed a little slower. 0.5. I think we're at max. Oh, we can do 1440. Let's try that. So if I open up my little video window here. Oops. Basically, what's happening is Derek is going ahead and changing different values inside of Blender. And as he changes these different values, Cycles is responding almost in real time. Almost in real time. And that's because of this trick of scrambling. The ability for Blender to just kind of sample its nearest neighbor is a cheat, and you can kind of see how some of the artifacts are affecting it. It eventually resolves quite well, but to get to that first pixel, that first preview, is something that we've been working really hard on. So if I zoom up a little bit, you can see he started to kind of like move around in the scene, and Blender will resolve itself very, very, very quickly. Now, in this video, or in the next one, it also shows a little bit of like some of the inconsistencies with it, and you'll start to see how some like shadows kind of pop in and out. That's a real problem with this, but at the very least, it demonstrates like, hey, getting something pretty quick. So I'm gonna stop this one. I'm gonna play one more, and I'll max out the settings on this one too. So this is a second iteration at real-time rendering, and you can see right away what happens as soon as the scene like sort of resolves itself. You can see it's almost like there's no bounces, there's nothing, and then Cycle starts to calculate the rest of that. But it's the speed to get to that first pixel is the thing that we've been really excited about, because this allows you to reasonably estimate what your lighting conditions will do to your scene. I'm sure, you know, if we have a ton of maps in it and everything, it'll be a heavy hit to your RAM, but like, this is amazing. Look how fast it can figure itself out. So Cycles in real time, that's kind of the goal here.
It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Subsurface scattering in real time.
Basically. Basically subsurface scattering in real time.
Wow.
This might be a good time. Yeah, I can kind of just leave this run, but I imagine people might have questions or thoughts, so I'll take a minute here and answer them. Or maybe not. I can't hear you, Sterling.
Sorry, let me unmute first. I have a question. So how much per hour in Amazon Web Services hardware does it take to get 600 and something threads?
You know, that's a very fair question. I'm going to answer that right now. There are two equations that we like to use. So it's about 90 cents for 64 cores per hour. So it's 90 cents for one machine that has 64 cores. We're going to run 10 of those in an hour. Oops, 10 of those in an hour. So that's $9 to have 640 threads for a solid hour, right? That's a pretty good equation. Once you start generating a lot of data, though, and having to download it and upload it, we like to use 1.7. That's a pretty good estimate of everything. So 1.7 per 64 cores per hour, 10 machines, $17 to have like the most amazing machine per hour, right? So that's the 9 would be the low end, 17 would be the high end.
Awesome.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Was that net render thing in Blender, or is that coming up, or is it an add-on?
So did you get that question?
I couldn't hear it, sorry, no.
He's curious how the net render component will make it to the masses. Will it be in Blender or as an add-on, or what's the plan?
Net render is partially really coded in actual like C code. It's not Python as far as I understand it. It takes a while to get any code inside of Blender, and Tom doesn't like how sloppy we write stuff. So we need to clean it up. And actually that's been part of the last couple of months is what Lucas has been working on, is trying to clean up a lot of this rendering code so that it can make it into master. There's a discussion on like, will there be a 2.79 long-term support, or will we just break and just all go to 2.8? I don't have an answer for that. I don't know what the foundation's plans are for it. But I do know that it is our intent, at least, to eventually get this release. We have a few hurdles to clear. First, we still got to optimize everything and get it all ready. But ideally, we'd like to submit that code to Blender as part of like their open source platform.
Cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the UDIM stuff.
Yeah, the UDIM stuff has been really exciting. It's gone through a lot of iterations. Blender doesn't like UDIMs. It's not really built for it. So we had to change quite a bit, and we discovered a couple errors along the way.
Right.
But yeah, now it's actually working out quite well.
It's effectively the direction Blender's taking in place of PTEX, right?
That's correct. I don't know what happened at PTEX development, but I know for us, at least, working on High Castle that needs incredibly detailed scenes, we started to realize that we needed a solution that allowed us to get more texture fidelity than just repeating textures. We needed to be able to paint really high-res stuff. And so that's where UDIMs came into play.
So I tell you what, so we're now kind of in the open forum part of this. So does anybody have anything that they want to share?
That's a lot. Jeez. Well, while it's copying that, I could show my demo reel, I guess. Which is,
do that.
and then show like my demo reel doesn't actually show any Blender files, but I did most of the stuff, or pretty much all of the stuff involved with Blender at some point. So yeah.
How many people have a demo reel?
Yeah.
Yeah. 2, 3. That sounds like 3. No demo reel.
Comes in handy sometimes.
Well, he's just that good. He doesn't
So this was for Xxx. I mean, it's just lame music. You don't really get. There's not really much sound. Yeah. I did, this was like my team, and I did all it says at the top right, you can't really see because it's covered, like what I did, like a lot of modeling stuff in Blender. This was for Wonder Woman. If you've seen Wonder Woman, like the end title sequence, and that's like it's kind of a breakdown.
These title sequences are amazing.
Yeah, they're crazy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Like some of the best versions.
Yeah.
Wait, this was done in Blender?
Parts of it were done in Blender. Like all the modeling was done in Blender. That's what I did. This was actually Cinema 4D, but done, and then that was done in Blender too. But like export it to Maya. You know.
Do you work in a studio or do you have your own freelance?
I work in a studio in Culver City called Greenhouse. It's just a small studio.
Funny, I was gonna go. I heard this was done locally. These Wonder Woman titles. I was gonna go track down somebody to talk at our group. So I'm glad you're
Oh, really? Nice. Yeah. This one actually started in Blender. It didn't. It ended up in C4D, but like I made like this crazy neon logo and they liked it, but then they were like, "Oh, we want it in C4D." So I couldn't use Blender for the final one, unfortunately.
What do you use to exchange what format?
I just use FBX, OBJ, you know. Like, if I'm doing the animation, I'll use an FBX, bake it out, and export it, you know, it depends. I've done Alembic. People say Alembic's the best one or something like that, because that one does like liquids and a bunch of other crazy stuff. But for the most part, I'm just doing models, so I just do FBX or OBJ, which is there's a little bit less cleanup you have to do with an OBJ, especially, you know.
Sure.
Like an FBX exports all the materials and you have to kind of clean that up, but you can export an OBJ pretty easily.
David, you still hearing us okay?
Yeah, this looks amazing too. The video played back really well.
Oh,
Okay,
cool.
good to hear it.
Yeah, let me see if this transferred. Transfer? Oh, cool. Yeah, I guess I could probably show a couple things that I did here. There's this Guardians of the Galaxy sequence that I did. I packed all the files, so let's see if it actually loads. Yeah, so this one was Guardians of the Galaxy. I did this like crazy animation thing. This didn't end up in the final, so like, yeah, I did that. Let me see what else I did. Another cool one. Let me see. Oh yeah, this one. This was the Xxx Title Sequence. This was like a lot of kit bashing. If I open up all my layers here, I kind of color coded everything.
Kit bashing?
Yeah, kit bash. Like I just basically we found you know how NASA has their like space parts that they have online. So we actually use like a NASA spaceship for that whole Xxx thing. we kind of took a NASA, because I mean that's what you do as a designer. You just like take other people's stuff, you know.
Yeah.
It's like free open source. So we just
Feel like an artist.
we took a NASA spaceship and a bunch of other random stuff. Like some of this is modeled by me, like the bigger parts, like the ones that are up close, like this screen in the middle here, but like the outside pipes and stuff, or like just kid bashed from like a NASA spaceship, which was kind of an interesting thing. So that was kind of like an overall theme, just flying through space for this thing.
So kit bashing refers to the act of taking assets that are otherwise.
Yeah. You know how like Star Wars spaceships are full of like random parts, you know?
Like the Greenville.
Orville, yeah, that's kit bashing. Just taking a kit, basically taking like a model kit and
Pull it apart.
just throw it everywhere, make it look cool, you know? No one's really been to space. No one knows what it looks like. So,
So
you
is this
just,
like the interior of the like rocket engine, or is it like?
yeah. This is the interior. It's actually the first shot on my demo reel. Let me see.
Yeah, I was really impressed by the
This shot right
amount
here.
of the amount of rebuilds, as it were, and it's kind of impressive to see this sort of.
Yeah. It's a bit dark, so you can't really see it too well, but it's that shot. I was pretty proud how it went. Like it goes here and then actually goes outside, so I had to do like some crazy transitions for that. So there's that, and another cool file I have. I probably have other cool files. Let's see. Here's something cool that I did. This was barely in the tile sequence, but I modeled the louver right here with like I used Blender's wireframe mode. And then I did like a bevel. Modeled like a triangle, subdivided it, did some weird stuff. I completely forgot what I did mostly, but like I modeled the louver. So I was pretty proud of this model, so I thought I'd include that one. Yeah, let me see if there's anything else. Maybe we go to the desktop here.
Okay, let's do
This? Yep.
Windows key M. It's here.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Here's something really cool that was mostly done in Blender. Let's see, I think this one's a good one. So I modeled the Hollywood sign, basically. If I do material mode, it kind of shows up. This might run slowly because there we go. Hockeywood. This was kind of like a cool thing. You saw the NHL thing. They changed it from Hockeywood to Hollywood because of like licensing issues, you know, like apparently the Hollywood sign is some crazy licensing stuff. So what? Yeah.
Seriously, I didn't know that. That's funny because that's the logo for our group. We're using the Hollywood.
Oh yeah, I know. I saw that. I remembered that when I was making this. I was like, I wonder if that guy has like the Hollywood thing. I could just rip that and like use it for. This was for the NHL, and they wanted like some hockey thing. So I did like this fancy 3D projection, and I got some cards.
Used for the for the terrain as well as the grass.
Oh yeah.
It looks pretty photorealistic despite the like limited geometry.
Oh yeah.
So it's from a real photo.
Yeah, it's from a real. I took a real photo. I put it into Crazy Bump, and then I like made like a displacement. Let me see what these things does. Oh, right here. There you go. You can kind of see it. It's not too strong. It gets changes to.
Have you ever gotten into like photogrammetry or anything like that?
I've used photogrammetry textures online, but like photogrammetry is really. You know, you have to take like 1,000 photos. It's just too much work, you know, like as a designer, I just kind of like get things done, you know, your turnaround's like a day, not a week, you know, you just need it. This was done in like 2 days.
Oh wow, okay.
So it's very much like you have to do this and get this done really quickly. You know?
You took a photo at this location, and then that photo layered onto that 3D shape.
I went to iStock and got a photo because you can't. A lot of people can't really take photos. Like we had a previous project where we like drove by and actually took a video, but it was like the video is not like super high quality because you can't really like go up. Like people get mad at you if you go up and take photos of the Hollywood sign, right? So I just got it off of iStock. We were debating doing that, like getting drone shots, but like we ended up not doing that just because it's a lot of work. So yeah, there's that one, and then I have one more I could probably show. This is the Cinerama Dome right here that I actually for this one I took a bunch of like we did have a bunch of photos of the Cinerama Dome, and so I kind of like you can see like the crappy 3D projections here like at the corner, you know, we kind of just like took random photos and textures of the Cinerama Dome and just projected them. You know, you can kind of see the interior right here. And the NHL wanted like some helmet on it, which is, I don't know, not just like a weird idea, but like, it's just like, it's hard to read it as a hockey helmet, but we were like trying to make it work, you know, so we kind of, I just came up with this, you know.
I noticed in the reel, you have it, separate from the actual final shot, you have it like assembling itself.
Yeah.
So I think you can tell a little bit more that it is a hockey helmet.
Yeah, let me see. We had like some funky little breakdown going on here.
Like it comes down.
I remember when they built that.
Yeah, we had like a funky breakdown. Yeah, so I did all of the modeling for that except for the helmet because it was kind of like a 1 week turnaround where we were like, we don't have time to make an entire photoreal hockey helmet or whatever, so we just grabbed something real quick. But I did all the other modeling for that. That was a crazy project trying to match everything, you know. So it was another fun one. And that's probably all I have right now. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool stuff. Thank you.
So I work at a company called Costa Visual Effects. We just want we want to talk about these. This is a lot of my coworkers and friends.
Yeah, that's just Blender one in enemy. Like, did you use Blender?
I did.
I've
I've used Blender on almost every single thing I've worked on in the 2 years I've been at the company.
Oh, nice.
So it's been used on. This win right here was for Gotham. We also won for this win right here is for Westworld. I've used it on Gotham, Westworld, Lethal Weapon, Training Day, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Stranger Things. That's a lot more. There's a lot. I've just TV, Lucifer. I just did some smoke scenes for Lucifer. Orville that just started a week or two ago. I used on that. Yeah, so we won for Gotham for supporting visual effects, and we won for Westworld for outstanding visual effects. And on Westworld, I used it for smoke or liquid simulations. Like a lot of people. Have you all watched Westworld?
Yeah.
Did you guys get intro sequence when they're like getting submerged?
No, I didn't. My company might have had little parts of that. I can't remember. There's a graphics part, and then there's the visual effects, and the graphics guys might have had something to do with that. I'm not sure. I doubt it. But the Man in Black, Ed Harris, when he's introduced in episode 2, where there's a bunch of guys, and he like kills them all. He stabs one guy in the neck, and shoots another guy. When he pulls the knife out of that guy's neck, there's a bunch of blood. That's all Blender. Which hits the guy with a shotgun. There's like a cloud of just a liquid sim, just a really basic putting an emitter there, tracking it in and all that, and then just kind of running it, working on the shader, like grabbing. We didn't have HDRIs of that actual set, so I just took the actual frame itself and wrapped it around, and it gets enough of the color and enough of that kind of environment information on the reflection of the water. And it's moving so fast and stuff. Yeah, and then the other one is he shoots the guy with a shotgun on this. It's like a mist of blood, basically. And just the particle system. Nothing fancy with that. And,
How long have you been using it?
88 years, 7, something like that. Yeah, so that was good. That was fun. And I spent all week this week actually. We've just started working on The Walking Dead, and I've been doing. I actually did a hair sim. Walker gets shot in the head, and when you put in blood, and blood comes out, but then it'd be cool to also have a little bit of hair. Hair sim. So I'm using it on Walking Dead now. Just everything that we get. There's always something we can do that will help. So, so that was good. What else? For the Gotham win for this one, everybody there is a Costa employee where I work. That's all our people. But for the Westworld one, there was a lot more vendors on that show. I think we're the main vendor on Gotham. But Westworld was, I think, at least 7 or 8 facilities, maybe 6 or 7. So they took like one person from each facility. So that's this guy right here, Paul Gezzo, was the guy that picked us to go up there and represent us. So that was fun. Let me close out this junk, and I can show you. I brought some Orville screenshots. I don't have much video to show today. Oh man, this mouse is nuts. But this is a shot in Orville. If you watch, it's a new Seth MacFarlane TV show just started. It's like Galaxy Quest. It's like making fun of Star Trek kind of. And in the opening credits, this is one of the shots. Like the opening credits just run over all these epic shots of the ship flying through space. And this is all matte painting. The ship is, I believe they rendered that probably out of Maya using Redshift as the renderer. The planet, the galaxy thing, that blue trail is all matte painting. And then it was too boring. Like just a painting with a ship flying in front of it. So they needed a lot of spice up. So I had to break it all out into like 3D layers so there's some dimension. And then I just, I started putting asteroids in Blender. I just made asteroids, and I grabbed a few screenshots of that. So there's like close-up. I did it in a whole bunch of different layers. Close-up ones. That's ones that fade off way into the background. And eventually I just kind of fade those off. I use like a roto and just kind of got rid of them, so it just kind of fades into that blue. Another layer, like a kind of a mid-ground layer. Another mid-ground layer. This is, they wanted sparkly things, that planet in the background is getting pulled apart. Because it was just a painting, there's no movement. So I did some warping on some of the painting things to make it look like it's slowly moving, and then they wanted like little specks of light. So I made these little, I made 3 little asteroids there, and I just made them like 100% reflective and put a light off here and had them spinning, so they would just catch light every once in a while and just throw that in there, and it looks like something. You can tell what it is, but little lights are kind of flickering. That's the magic. You can't even see it on there. But then they wanted smaller bits, like lots of tiny little rocks. I did that. Put that in.
Particle system?
Yeah, all particles. Yep. And if you haven't used particles in Blender, it's a struggle. So,
Yeah. Well, it was meant to get a revamp, right?
yeah, I wish they would get on that. This was a temp thing, but they ended up doing something different. But yeah, anyway, that's if you watch Orville and you see that shot in the beginning of the credits, you'll know there's some Blender there. Lost this mouse. There it is. I also did. There's a show called So You Think You Can Dance, and they needed a new opening, new title sequence. And somehow through a friend, I got that. The friend contacted me and said, they're doing this. He didn't even tell me what it was. He said that I have some people that are shooting something on a green screen and they need a warehouse background. And I said, that's what I do. I can make a background, warehouse, kind of easy. And I pull green screens for a living, so that's what I can do. So they contacted me. And I went to set that day, and you know, the big green screen shoot, and you know, obviously I found out it was So You Think You Can Dance and all that, and I would ask him, you know, like, well, what's the idea? Oh, we just thought a warehouse would look cool. We don't really have anything planned out. And I'd say, all right, well, you know, looking at their past openings, because I don't really watch the show, but they sent me a bunch of their past openings. They're very graphic. They're very flashy colors, people in silhouette dancing. Everything's fast moving and particle, you know, blobs everywhere, and very motion graphic. And I can do that, but it's not my specialty, so I wouldn't really like sell myself out to a major production as a motion graphic artist. So I told them, like, I need to talk to your graphic guy and kind of get on the same page and see what, you know, how I provide him with things. And they said, well, you already have a graphics guy. I said, so I'm everything? And they said, yeah. So I put together like a little team real quick. Because my original intent was to use Blender for all of it, and just me do my warehouse part, do the compositing. It would have been fun to do all the green screens in Blender and all that. But then when they told me I'm doing everything, then it got a bit overwhelming, and I'm like, I just got to stick to what I know. So I ended up doing most of the compositing in Nuke just for speed's sake. I was going to do all the 3D tracking myself, and that went out the window, so I hired a tracker from work, got like 30 shots done in 2 days. So I had to farm things out a little bit, but I still did, I kind of supervised it all. When you get something like this that has a real tight deadline, they instantly want to see stuff. So like 2 days after having it, they're already saying, we'd love to see some stuff, and you'd send something over, blah, blah, blah. So it's crazy. Like you're trying to explain to them, well, you gave us 30 shots, tracking them. It's not going to happen overnight. I don't have a warehouse yet. So I slapped together like 2 walls with some graffiti that I downloaded from Google. And just to give them an idea, I literally put one spotlight in it. I threw that in the background. I picked one shot, pulled a really rough key, and threw this in the background. And you know, just to say, like, here's the very, like, this is by no means an indication of what's coming, but it's something. So then I started working on the warehouse. So I started making this big warehouse, right? I had grabbed a bunch of images of warehouses. I didn't really have a design idea in mind. I just grabbed a bunch of things and I started modeling things I thought looked cool. And my idea was to build the warehouse entirely and then just move the camera around inside. Like if something's happening in the corner, just move it over to the corner and render from there, and move it over here and render from there. And if you've ever done interior lighting in Blender, it's kind of a drag. There's all kinds of cheats. You can put like what's called portals in the windows to limit the bounces and all that kind of junk. As soon as you put a roof over something, if you're trying to light something with the world, you put a roof on it, the lighting goes out the window. It takes samples and artifacts. And, so the whole time I'm modeling this, I'm thinking like, I gotta figure out all that. I'm like, whatever. So I was struggling with the design ideas and not even sure if I was going in the right direction. So then I'm like, all right, I'll just grab one of these images and I'll start modeling from that. So I started modeling directly off this image I grabbed from the internet. And then I projected the image onto the model, baked it, and then I was taking those images into Photoshop and cleaning them up a little bit and then putting them back on. And I had a nice clean, basically a model of that photograph, which was easy and quicker than like modeling it myself and trying to figure out, where do I put a window? Where do I do this? But I still had to patch windows that were covered with things. It was still going to be a big nightmare. So then I still got the roof problem, right, with the lighting. So then it dawned on me that why don't I just, there's a bigger image of it. Why don't I just make walls? Why don't I just make like 5 different walls, really basic walls that I can then just like put an array on it and just as I need it longer, just keep clicking array, it makes it longer. And so I did that. I just started making walls. This is one wall section, just duplicated and 90 degrees to itself. No roof yet, no floor, but it already looks spectacular. I used textures from Andrew Price's Polygon, which is wonderful. Really high res, great stuff. I think I only signed up for just a month, which is $7 or something. And
It's a lot of free stuff.
yeah, it's spectacular.
I'll let friends use it.
Yeah, it's great. So I only signed up for 1 month and I got everything I needed. I've got this amazing library of all these grungy textures now. And I would just layer them, to me it took a lot of painting, of course. But really basic walls, nothing hard at all. And I made a couple of them and then I made like 2 or 3 columns as well. I made a round one, I made a square one. This is 2 of the 2 wall sections and the square thing, and it's 1 wall section with the round one. So it gave me ways to, I made like a girder. I made 2 different girders, iron ones, and it just let me like mix and match so I could make any kind of thing I wanted really quick. And it was all texture based, so it was almost like real time, right? Like it was a lifesaver, like coming up with that idea that why don't I just make walls, just stick things together. And then like here you can see the columns are a little lighter than the walls, and it's super easy to just throw a color node on the texture and drag it a little bit darker, a little redder, and now it matches perfectly. It looks like a completely different column. Nobody will realize it's the same thing. So yeah, you can see that's how easy the setup was for some of these backgrounds I started doing. Literally just that second wall that's in the background is only there just a plug wall, doorway hole, the first wall. You can't even really see it. So yeah, I made 1 floor and I painted, you can see in the textures, I kind of painted grunge along the ground where it meets the wall. And I just made like 1 corner so I could I would just scale that floor up if I didn't need to see the corner, just scale it up long enough to see, or duplicate it and then mirror it. So I had like a nice longer section if it looked stretched or anything. Just really easy. I made some lights. I grabbed this on what's it called? Blend Swap. There's a great lighting kit. Somebody built like a studio light kit, right, for like photographers, right, where it's got all these like soft boxes and tripods and all that kind of stuff. So I went in there, grabbed that light kit, modified it. I think this one is, these numbers 3 and 5 are the 2 that are the least modified, I think. And then I just kind of took parts of it and made the other 3 lights. Because that's so you think you could dance, people wanted lights and flashy things, very Hollywoody. So I made all these light rigs and then I could just drag and drop them right into projects. So it really became just this like kit bashing, right? Like I just had a set of models and I would just slap them all together in random configurations and it would look completely different. I grabbed a couple of roofs from Blend Swap. I grabbed 2 of them. And then kind of this is the original, this was the beginning, but I kind of retextured it. I got rid of lights, I moved girders around. Same with this one. I left this one mostly the same model-wise, but I did kind of retexture it a lot. And then I had roofs, started slapping those together a little bit. I put debris on the ground, which was just I initially set it up as a particle system, but then I didn't want to mess around with bring new particles all the time and make it all. So I ended up just baking the particle system just another asset, just another object I would just drag in, scale it, place it, and if I wanted less of them, I would just lower it down below the plane of the floor a little bit, and the smaller ones would all vanish, and the bigger ones would become smaller.
What were the particles?
They're really small.
They were just dust particles or something?
They're just little chunks. I just broke something up, shattered something, and then just used those chunks.
Oh, I see. For
floor debris,
right,
yeah, just to make it look like a messy. The original idea was to have like pallets, stacks of old pallets and barrels and all kinds of stuff in the background and graffiti everywhere. But then once they hit me with their deadline, I was like, we got to simplify a little bit. So like pallets and barrels and all that kind of stuff went out the window. And then this was kind of like one of the first, which wasn't so washed out of there, but this was one of the first, like where we were kind of really finishing up, getting the approval on the look of what the backgrounds are going to look like. And that's kind of like what an end scene ended up being, something that simple where I bring in one column and just array it in two directions. This has both roofs in there, but the pointy one and the flat one wall, one floor, and a couple lights, and it's done. I would match the, I can show you, this is what the, oh, is this video? Oh, the new Windows thing plays video, cool. This is their edit. This is their first edit that they gave me. Oh, we don't need the sound, do we? I can turn it down. How do you turn that down? Why not? I don't know if you want to listen to it. But this is what they gave us. This was what they sent me to bid the show whole thing on. So you can see it's not bad, but it's not great either. There's a lot of different shades of green. There's all these little pieces of metal holding all the letters together. There's ceiling lights. White. They're wearing white. So literally 50% of their costume was going the exact same green as the green screen. So I hired a rotoscope artist as well.
Outsource the thing.
Yeah, one of my really good friends happened to be off for a week, so I sent him all that. So yeah, that was what they sent me, and then started working through all that. There's these. Where did that come? Was that this? Is that this? Oh yeah, this was. Where did it go? There it is. Oh no, that's no, that was it, right? That was the same thing. I think so. This mouse is making me crazy. Yeah. Okay. So then we started doing. Is this gonna play? Oh, somebody's not gonna play on here.
We can always download VLC if you want.
Is this it? This isn't it. I don't think. I want this mouse. I want this one to play. Yeah, it's not gonna play. Dang it.
I mean, it's the intro video, right? So it might be an
Is it online?
No, it's not these are all like making of. These are all individual things, the stages and stuff. Can we download VLC? Is that
I'm doing that. Yeah.
Just
do a Google for VLC. If you're not familiar with VLC, this is like the play everything video player. It's open source also. It's awesome. It plays every format. It does some pretty amazing stuff if you dig into it.
It doesn't play ProRes.
No?
Or at least not on a Windows machine. Or maybe it's just my machine that didn't.
My machine does.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's weird.
Maybe I just need to put the codecs in or something.
Yeah.
Is it downloading? Yeah.
By the way, you mentioned blend swap. Does everybody know what blend swap is?
Oh yeah, we can show blend
Does
swap.
anybody not know what blend swap is? No. So it's a place to get free Blender models. So if you just Google blend swap, it's awesome. Like some of them you need to give attribution to the original artist, but it's great. You don't need to throw together something really quick. You could just download the models you need and slap them together, and you're good to go.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. This site's been around for ages. It's working.
There you go.
I think it's the CG Cookies guys that running now, or is it
Yeah,
someone
I think
else?
so. I think they have something to do with it, that's for sure. Yeah, it's a cool site. Yeah, there's lots of there's a good mix of variety of things, but every once in a while, like cars especially, there's some amazing car models, helicopters, planes, things like that. Always useful. Let's see if that works now, right? Oh, come on. This mouse is making me crazy. I'm not good with odd mice.
For once, it's on my mouse.
Yes. Play. There we go.
Yeah.
So this was like the first. Is it gonna loop? Yeah, good. This was the first. I just threw something in and said, "Here's kind of like you want it to be dark. Is this too dark?" Just so they could see something with a floor and all that. And then I did. Then we started putting like lights in and flares, and that we were talking about sparks at one time. Like maybe sparks will every like third shot, maybe sparks will shoot out and lights will turn off or something. The shadows were in the plate actually. Just they came through with the green screen pool. So yeah, they came out really nice.
Like 1,000 shades of green in there.
Yeah. So that was kind of the start of what, like trying to get it to look a little graphic-y, but that's really rough. Then I brought in a friend who's a motion graphics guy, and he started experimenting with things we could do to like kind of spice up what the dancers are doing. So he tried like a little particle thingy like this. We kept calling it fire because it was wavy and all that. But I liked that one. They didn't like that very much for some reason. I don't know why. We tried sparks, which I thought was also kind of cool, especially if we were going to do sparks coming off the lights every once in a while. I thought it would tie everything together, but then again, they didn't like it for some reason. No idea why. Then we did, the graphics guy was like, well, we could go do that old light streak thing. Remember like the old vacuum cleaner commercial? And he's like, that's always like the fallback for graphics guys. And they loved it. So that was what we're like, oh, come on. So that's what we ended up going with. It's pretty funny. And then we also tried like doing like practical elements in it, like putting in like smoke or other little kind of sparky things, and just to get ideas. And they did like the smoke. They didn't want it to be like, we almost had it as if like the dancers were like kicking up huge gusts and stuff. They didn't like that, but they were like, what about just like an environment smoke? And we liked that idea. That was good, and that would hide a lot of green screen issues as well.
I like the little flames they had going on with the smoke.
Yeah, the little, yeah.
Exploding feet.
When she like touches the ground.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, this was one of the first ones where we were like, let's try and make a really nice one for them. So you put a few flares in, the lights were looking pretty good. We got streaks in, backgrounds coming together a bit. There was no graffiti in this yet, but with the flares and stuff, you almost can't even see the walls anymore. But eventually we started putting graffiti in on everything, which kind of dirty.
Other right from behind the view.
Yeah, it's an early test. I didn't, just didn't get to, and eventually it fixed it all, of course, but it's just because I rendered the background all as one element right here. Whereas later on, I rendered the lights separately, the background separately, so then I can put the lights over top of the green screen in just one section and all that. But in this one, it was all just slapped together really quick, just for some approvals and stuff. And then we've got, this was my first, this is the same edit, but with rough backgrounds in it. Just really, this was like the first thing I sent them, like, here's everything with green screen gone. It's really rough and crappy, but the green screens are at least gone. The keys are really bad. There's no color correction anywhere. There's no graphics yet. Kind of a mess, but at least there was no green, and they could see the backgrounds, what was going on in them. So it was, they liked seeing that. They liked seeing no green. Clients love that. And then this one is, the way we had our little pipeline set up is I would do I would do the background and the green screening and all that, and I would render that down to an image sequence, give that to the graphics guy who had the same camera tracks as me, and then he would put in smoke, all the flares, the trails coming off the dancers, and then he would do the final color correction. They wanted like this typical, again, we tried going with like reds and yellows and bright things and primary colors, and then we did a test of the typical Hollywood teal and orange thing, you know, that every movie is. They loved it. So we went with the teal and orange. So this is what it looks like before the graphics guy got it, but when I was done, this is kind of what it ended up as. It's such a dark, it's barely, you can barely see what's going on because it's so dark and the light and all that, but it looked pretty good. It's pretty happy. There's one streaks in there, I guess. Oh, no, I guess these do have streaks. I put a lot of streaks in this. And that floor thing, the graphics guy, let me back up where that is. That thing. Oh, I love that thing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that turned out really good.
So these effects are mostly coming out of Nuke, or
those are all After Effects.
After Effects.
Yeah, he uses all After Effects.
Right.
But it was nice. Like the tracker, the guy I hired to match move everything, exported the tracks for us in everything we needed. Like,
right.
I think he gave us Blender, Maya, After Effects, Nuke, Cinema 4D, and I would tell him like, nobody in cinema is going to be working on this, or nobody in Maya. It's just me and the After Effects guy. He's like, it's just easier if I just click the button and exports all of it. So
nice.
Yeah, that was, and I don't have the final thing. I do have a couple shots because I handed that over to the graphics guy. The graphics guy did the final one and then delivered it. So I actually never grabbed I grabbed it, I have it on my TV at home now because they've been airing it for a few weeks. But I didn't get a movie clip of it. So I have some final individual shots, but I don't have the entire thing. But we've already watched it, 4 times. So it's probably all right. But this is kind of what the finished images look like. He's particles floating in space. Yeah. Flares, the lights all come over the letters and everything now. There's graffiti.
So these particles came from where?
After Effects.
After Effects.
Yeah. I imagine this particular is probably what he used.
Did you export these as EXR, or what's your?
They weren't EXR. I think I gave them DPX, which are smaller, same image quality but smaller. So it's just easier. Like at work when we get things from clients or when we deliver, we usually do DPXs. Or ProRes. I think we delivered to the client in ProRes on this, but when we were exchanging files amongst us, it's always DPX usually. I think it's just another one of the shots with all the stuff in it.
It's awesome, then.
Yeah, it turned out good. Thanks.
Turned out great.
Yeah, it was fun. It was just a crazy. The deadline was just insane. One more. It's like the smoke and stuff all really helps sell like the dimension and the camera move and stuff. And came out pretty good. Yeah, it was fun. And then yeah, that's it. I think these last images are just I took pictures of it on TV the first time it aired. They ended up putting they put the titles in and all that. And, you can see I put that light rig there's one camera move that comes down from the ceiling, and I thought it'd be cool to have that light rig really close to camera so the camera kind of sweeps by it. Yeah, it turned out pretty good.
Very cool.
And then my first credit for my silly stuff. Yeah, that was it really. And yeah, that's all I have other things, but I can do it another time.
I stumbled upon Blender and started with those tutorials. And the first ones made me crazy. The first ones, I needed the therapy. Because I was so frustrated with like really basic things. Like somebody did a tutorial on how to like model a basic head out of a cube. It was a 20-minute tutorial, but after about 12 minutes, I just was like, I give up. I'll never figure this out. But something just had me coming back to Blender. And I figured that in the end, what I didn't know is it being free and open source and all of the great YouTube tutorials and resources that are out there, that this was going to be the best software for me to realize that dream. So I started off doing small shorts and different projects, which some are on YouTube, but I won't reveal the URLs. Trust me, you know, you'll be like, oh, yikes. But after everybody makes a yikes project. So there actually is a trailer for this. If you go to videos, check it out.
We're gonna click there.
Sorry?
Not to this.
Oh, shall we play it?
Yeah.
Okay, this one here.
So beautiful, Baba.
The real beauty is how everything here has a purpose. Trees make the air we breathe. Without them, there is no life.
Actually, I look pretty good for my age. Baba, is that the princess stole? Can I sit in it? Please?
Like I told you, everything has a purpose. That was not made for you. This was.
I am Princess Stefina.
Are you ready to go to your palace, Princess Stefina?
Sure. But what about my family?
Unfortunately, you'll have to leave them behind. But just say the word and I'll bring you home. You can be a princess for a day, a week, a month, a year.
There is no sign of Stefina.
I asked everyone in the village. Nobody knows where she is.
Stefina, are you ready to go home? If everything works out, we'll have our whole lives to dance together.
What?
When I started this project, I didn't have biblical box. I didn't have any like name talents. I started off with just different actors I knew, and I was living in Detroit at the time that I started. And you know, life took a couple of different directions because I was fortunate to get a great sales agent, Wonderful Entertainment, and they really helped me to enhance this and bring on some name talent, take things to the next level from a marketability. Oh yeah, there is a voice talent too that is present. He was probably like the biggest star.
Oh, nice.
So Solomon voiced the role of one of the babies. He recorded this like, you know how long it takes to do animation. We did this, I think he recorded it like in 14 or 15, I don't even remember. But, so that's my project. What I would love to do is continue to do feature animations in Blender. My animation philosophy is to actually just make it. When people talk about getting up to the Pixar quality levels, I mean, it's a dream that many people share. But me personally, I just share the dream of telling different types of stories that may not otherwise get a voice and actually creating the product. Because if I spend the amount of time it takes to make something as detailed as they do in the Pixar realm with a small team, you know, it may take us 10 years to finish one project. It may take 12, and by then it would be dated anyway. I just believe in like making stuff. So I say like, if you start off with like $100 in a dream, go for it. That's my philosophy. I know everybody doesn't share that. Some people want to go, and I'm starting that process. Like when you go past the hat, and you're like, hey, let me try to raise this amount for a level, a production level, and let me get this next level of name attached and go through the traditional Hollywood realm. But Blender, to me, gives you the freedom to just start wherever you are. I know I'm not the first person to make a feature with Blender, but I feel like I'm on the pioneer edge of it because most people just, I did use After Effects to composite. Some people actually use Blender for all of that though, but I'm not quite there on the compositing do prefer After Effects, but that's pretty much, that's me. That's my project. Thank you. The gingerbread man? Oh, I'm working on this gingerbread man thing that you guys don't want to even see that. It's in its infancy stages, so like, trust me. And you guys would just laugh at that. But this is my project.
Awesome.
And I'm so glad to share with you guys because you know how hard it is to do, especially when you start even to make one thing in Blender, like one of those little bushes in the background. So building up to actually doing a lot of different character models, and there's so many great tutorials out there to help walk you through all the steps. I was just like you when I started. I was like, I just want to start. You know, there's so much I still have to learn though, and I'm glad I can network with you guys. And he's here too. He brings a lot of excitement.
They'll be teaching future sessions, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, he already knows. Like, you should see how he jumps in with that the painting tool, like, or the sculpting tool. It's interesting in things that children can like pick up on so quickly. Because I'm like, man, you're almost good. It's better than that than me. So yeah, that's it.
When are you hoping to have it released?
Very soon. You know, in the Hollywood world, you're waiting for all the little duckies to line up, you know, so that you can have the best possible debut. So I'm hoping it will be released as soon as the next few months.
Wow.
So we're in the final stages of post, and we're locking into some of those conversations about different people who I can't name. That's another thing, like, I didn't even know like all the legal things, like all the things you have to sign, but you can't name if this person is interested in that one until after this many days, or, you know, I'm learning, but soon. And I'm excited to share it. You know, that's a project I always wanted to at least say I did. I did a lot of shorts. I want to say I did one feature. Hopefully we do a lot more.
Very cool.
How will we find it? You guys can find us. You can actually contact me. I lost an audience member. You can contact me directly if you use this form, or if you send a message to my email, which is thisguyprincess.com. Yeah. Or the Facebook group. I think I lost an audience member.
Okay, I'll let you know. Thank you.
Oh.
All right.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Round of applause. So for I'll turn this off. So theskyprincess.com is apparently where we go for that.
So I could share my 3D printing project.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Sure.
So here I am like totally, I guess I've been using Blender for maybe 3 months to produce this. So here, actually I've got some extra things showing up there. Which ones they are.
Here, why don't you grab a seat here, and that way you can be close to this mic, but also talk to folks.
So here, so the project that I'm working on is I'm 3D printing a small model of a cat. It's going to have a phone charger inside of it. So see where the paws have these holes, like the little prongs you put. So I was like, and I got this, actually my first idea was to have a dinosaur. And then I realized when I got into Blender, making something that stands up was like way beyond where I could start. So this is basically like a box that sits on the ground with a head. And so I kind of messed with this a bit, and this was the first version. The head actually detaches and fits in. I messed up like dozens and dozens of things getting this, and then eventually I printed it. And I will show you that in printing it, I printed the base first here. So pretty much what you saw, it came out that way. You can see here, these are actually artifacts of me not blending the meshes well, because like I'm new, and so my meshes will get messed up, and I would just like keep going because like it's complicated to figure it out. The other thing I had to figure out is like technically the mesh you have to extrude it this much, and then this surface is a mesh. Whereas at first, I had the whole thing solid, and then it would cost like $1,000 a print because it has to have so much material. So, but figuring out how to do this like extrusion to get it to be thick, I did it in Blender at first, and then I found actually there's another piece of 3D software I use from a company that makes 3D printers. It's called Mesh Mixer, and that has tools for doing this that I've sort of started to use instead because it's largely automated. So then I did this first. This is printed with that process that you see most popularly where the little thing just extrudes like plastic toothpaste kind of into a shape. And you can see like, yes, it's made out of that. Then I tried to do the head using that same process, and I used a company called Shapeways that does this for you. They wouldn't let me print the head that way because you need to support the structure while it's being built. And the head has this little hole at the bottom. And I tried to build my own supports inside the head, like rods to hold it up. They never let it through. And they're so overwhelmed I could never actually get in touch with someone there. So I gave up and used a different process called SLS. It's like sintered laser something. And it's cool. It has a gas and stuff floating around, and the lasers zap the gas and turn it solid. It means that the model that comes out is supported in powder, and you can build any shape. So I got the head, and this is exactly how early I am. I went through so much trying to get the head print that it actually, the scale is not even right. And so you come out and it's kind of small on the thing. But the cool thing is this SLS process, it's hollow in there, you can see. And like, I just took the mesh, hollowed it out, and they print the thing for you. So this is kind of version 1, and I came in because now I'm trying to make the body not look sort of like a turtle. And it's challenging the edge of my like mesh making skills right there. Cool.
Awesome. Right on.
It's actually surprisingly more durable. I mean, I assume it could break pretty easily, but like I didn't know what to expect. This person, like, yeah, if you want it. It comes out kind of solid feeling.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and you can feel the two different materials there. So the head is that like powder that's been like congealed by lasers, whereas the body is just this extruded plastic kind of thing.
And you name the companies that you use?
I use Shapeways for both. They offer multiple processes.
Shapeways?
Yeah, so I found like, I looked around to find other places that will do it cheaply, but more advanced studios, you know, I'm going to be way below the minimum of what they would want to do. Maybe some of these like collaborative spaces like this.
If you don't mind asking, how much?
Yeah, so printing that body cost $30. Printing that head ended up costing $16. That's not including the shipping, which gets you up on top of that. What happens is that as you go up in size, it gets pretty expensive pretty quickly to do stuff, but because the head is small, it's okay.
Is this just based on the size and not the material? Or?
It is both. Okay. And that's a huge reason that I try to hollow it out as much as possible. Yeah. But it's partly the volume, even if it is hollow, because they have larger printing machines and they're essentially selling you space inside of it. Okay. So the space that they give you, they're not able to use for printing something else.
Okay.
The powder material was really cool. Like you could paint. Do they also do painting, or you can do your own painting?
Yeah, yeah. It's cool because like basically there's no shading, there's no animation. You're just making a mesh there. They have different colors, but it's all solid.
So because this is such a pricey product, what do you plan to do?
For me, this is just like a hobby project now where I wanted to make it happen, and like it's just really cool that using Blender, you know, I can dream this up, and then Blender. This is like a tiny subset of what you can do with Blender. Obviously, you've seen all this other stuff, but you can export and then print via service. I don't even have to buy because the printers themselves are very expensive and difficult to use.
Okay.
So this like lets you bypass that. Just
what file type do you export?
Yeah, so the one weird thing, printers, the 3D printers use a format called STL, which is a very, like, from what I understand, very simplistic format. It only has triangles with a normal coming out of the triangle. And and it doesn't even know that those triangles are joined together in groups. They just happen to have vertices that are at the same exact points, and then it's like, okay, that's a solid. So it's very easy to mess that up if points are a little bit off. But what I've found out more recently is Shapeways and other 3D services will accept uploads in the OBG format, which is like has more stuff in it, I guess, like groups or something. I actually don't know all of the features of 3D modeling that you could use in that, but I know that I've uploaded OBJ now.
Awesome. Just curious if you'd seen this. This is the Mesh 3D Print Toolbox. It's an add-in for Blender. It's included with Blender. It's written by Camel Barton, who's one of the primary authors of Blender.
I think I used it a little bit.
Okay.
I am so early with this. Like, you see how the head is too small for the body? I actually have made multiple errors with sizing, and because Blender doesn't have, or you can add units to it, but so and I've used that tool a bit to figure out if the units I'm working with are correct.
So it looks like, let's see, checks. Yeah, here we go. So it'll do things like check for manifold edges and check volume. Gives you stats on volume. I think what happened was somebody sent Camel a 3D printer, and he's a coder, so he's like, awesome. He wrote an add-in to make it a lot easier. There's some nifty feature in here where you can actually see it'll color code the mesh, or you can see where it's not uniform, or when it's beyond a certain thickness or something like that. So
yeah,
anyways.
I know one issue I've had is this non-manifold mesh.
Otherwise, water type, right? Is another way to say that. Okay. You kind of want you can't have open
edges that are separate.
Yeah.
It has to be completely hollowed out.
Yeah, or it's like
it's recommended that you
it's completely solid. It's just that the solid shape is this right here, not this whole space.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have messed up the meshes a lot by doing that, and I don't even know a lot of times what I've messed up. So tools like that sort of get it.
No one else was saying.
Yeah, I was going to say, anyone else have any other projects? Yeah, go for it. All right. So I tell you what, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank all the speakers today who presented really awesome stuff. And stay in touch. So basically, again, we have a Meetup site. I don't know how you guys found us, but we have a Meetup site where we announce this kind of thing. So come to our next one, stay in touch with the people you meet here, and yeah, going to get a deck to use, talk to you afterwards. But thanks for coming, everybody.